graph a linear inequality. Y'all, if you can graph a linear equation, you can graph a linear inequality. There's just one little tweak that we have to do, and we'll do it together. So we're going to graph y is greater than 3x minus 2. Now remember that when you graph a line, that line represents all the values that make this true. Okay, that's the point of the equation. Now with an inequality, we have a lot more options because we're not just looking at equal, we're looking at anything that makes it greater. So let's go into graph this. To graph, we're going to pretend that we are just graphing 3x minus 2. We call this the boundary line. Okay, so we first need to graph and think about the boundary line. So with that, we've got a slope of 3. I'm going to make that a fraction, make it 3 over 1. And I have a y-intercept of negative 2. Let's graph it. So I start with my y-intercept. I go down 2 on the y-axis. My slope is 3 over 1. So 1, 2, 3. Oh my gosh, I can't count. 1, 2, 3 over 1. All right, so I graph my line. I'm ready for my line. Now, go back to your inequality. This inequality is greater than. That means it's not equal to. Our boundary line is not part of the solution. So I need a dotted line. Because the dotted line shows this is my boundary, but it is not part of the solution. So dotted line. So, okay, if you have greater than or less than, we need a dotted line. Okay, there's your whoop. Now you have to think about shading. I always find it easier if y is on the left, and this is y. See what I did? Because we're talking about the y-axis. Right? Y represents the y-axis. So we have our boundary line graphed, and we say that y is greater than 3x minus 2. Well, think about the y-axis. Which way do you move for the y values to be greater? Up, right? As we go up on the y-axis, that's where my y values get greater. So if the inequality says y is greater, then we are going to shade up, above the line. So everything above my boundary line is shaded. And this is the graph of the inequality. If you want to check your work, you pick any point in the shaded region. Now, 0, 0 is in my shaded region. I'm going to check that. Okay, so we're going to check the point 0, 0. Any point in the shaded region would work. So I plug it in. 0 is greater than 3 times 0 minus 2. Well, 3 times 0 is 0. So is 0 greater than negative 2? Holla! Yes, it is. So I know that that is correct. Let's do one more just for kicks. I have y is less than or equal to negative 2/3 x plus 4. Okay, again, we start with our boundary line. So I have a slope, negative 2/3, y-intercept of 4. There's my y-intercept. Slope, down 2 over 3. Down 2 over 3. Do I have a solid or a dotted line? Go back. We have an equal. Equal is part of my inequality. That means the boundary line is part of the solution. So I can have a solid line. Okay, so if we have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, solid line. That's for our boundary line. Okay, now think about y. Y is less than that. Which way do the y values get less? The answer is down. So that means we shade everything underneath our boundary line. Once again, you can check your work. I always love 0, 0 if it works. So 0 is less than or equal to negative 2/3 times 0 plus 4. Well, negative 2/3 times 0 is 0. So is 0 less than or equal to 4? Yep. Once again, I have shaded correctly. Okay, one more. And that's because this is not in our normal form. I prefer things to be in slope-intercept form. You could graph this one easily by intercepts, if you've done that before. But the thing is, if you use the slope-intercept form where y is by itself, it makes the shading up or down a whole lot easier. So Let's first practice by getting y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I have negative 3y equals negative 2x plus 6. And then I divide everything by negative 3. So y equal, oh man, I made that an equals. We're going to come back to that in a second. 2/3 x minus 2. Pretend, everyone, that this started as, let's go less than or equal to. Sorry, that was a slacker on my part. And now we're ready to graph. So our y-intercept of negative 2, our slope is a positive 2/3. It's got an equal sign, so we're going to have a solid, and y is less, so we shade underneath. So the whole point is, if you have something, this is given in standard form, rewrite it. You have the ability to manipulate inequalities and equations, to move things around. Move them around to get y by itself so that you can shade easily.